So welcome to another edition of the NCBI podcast. I'm June Tinsley, Head of Communications with NCBI. And today I'm chatting with Maedhbh Hennessy, who lives in Limerick. And she's just finished up participating in the National Sharing Day, which is an initiative run by the HSE. So you're very welcome, Maedhbh, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, June. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. So would you mind telling us a little bit of how you got involved in the National Sharing Day and what exactly it was about?
Okay, well, I was speaking at webinar 2 for the National Sharing Day, which was today, as you mentioned. And basically I got involved because I was made aware of the submission process by the NCBI's advocacy campaign. So I put in my submission and I was lucky enough to be shortlisted and then picked. So and the topic that I spoke on initially, the submission was about the value that disabled people add to their community and how we're valued. So then it kind of evolved into a talk on dispelling the one-dimensional view of people with disabilities.
And tell us just a little bit about the National Sharing Day in general. Am I correct in thinking that this was an online conference essentially that's been spanning over a couple of weeks, in lieu of the fact that this year there wasn't going to be able to be a one day that the HSE was going to have its usual national conference?
Yes, exactly. So the National Sharing Day, as you mentioned, it was online this year. And to be honest, I don't have an awful lot of information about the National Sharing Day because this is my first year kind of being involved with it in any capacity. It's mainly just a platform for people with disabilities to kind of have their say and be able to interact with policymakers and different organizations to just give your view. And it's been my experience this year has been very good. And I think they run it. They've been running it every year now, and they were saying that actually online seemed to work quite well because it meant that a lot of people, perhaps with disabilities or even without, were able to attend and take part more than usual.
Which is true, because when I logged into it myself, they were highlighting that there wouldn't have been a room in a hotel big enough to accommodate the amount of people that were actually supporting it online. So there is a benefit to COVID in that respect, if it is bringing people together
Exactly.
with more ease. And I suppose, Maedhbh, in terms of your own experience, you're based in Limerick and you avail of NCBI services. So what level of vision do you have?
I always find that question a tricky one to answer, and I think a lot of people who are visually impaired do. I have Stargardt's disease, so it means that my central vision is poor. I think technically my vision is 6/60, which from my understanding means that what you might see at 60 meters, I would see at 6.
Okay.
And then my peripheral is better, so I tend to I can often be seen to be looking at people a bit sideways, but that's just the clearest way to see them.
Yeah, exactly. That's just how it works for you.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what your input into the National Sharing Day was. You highlighted there it was to dispel the one-dimensional view that people have. So what has been your experience?
Yeah, so to dispel that view, I just give a couple of examples, and I suppose I could run those through here. I've been a scout basically my whole life, and I've continued on as a leader. And I was just given an example there of how there's like an added value, I think, in some ways, to having a disabled scout leader because, it's not obvious. People with my condition will know that, like, it's not obvious when that you are disabled when somebody meets you.
Yes.
And so they get used to relying on me to like organize activities and camps as well as other leaders, of course, and then they learn that how limited my vision is. Oftentimes when I run into a tree, quite literally, so they naturally they're kind of surprised and have lots of questions. And I think that really helps them to understand, that people who are visually impaired or disabled in any way are not that different at all. And yeah, that was kind of one of the examples that I had given in the talk, and it very much focused on the importance of integration and acceptance and understanding. Because these are things that we hear focused on in the media a lot.
Yes.
And kind of, I suppose, when you meet somebody who has a hidden disability in some respects, it can, when it's disclosed to you, then it can kind of break those stereotypes of how disabled or visually impaired or blind people are seen.
Yes, exactly. I suppose you're essentially, by doing everything that you're doing, be it through scouting or work or whatever, you're essentially demonstrating what you can do. And then you're challenging people's perceptions and judgments when you do disclose what the disability is that you have.
Yeah, and I find I usually get a very warm reception to it. There can be a sense of disbelief because they've gotten to know you and work with you over a few years, and then they might ask you to move their car, and I'll be like, you really don't want me to move your car, you know. And after I've explained why, they come round and understand that it's really not a good idea.
Yes, exactly.
And I the other example then I gave, and it's kind of something that's mirrored throughout, is I'm involved with a club called The Gathering in Limerick, and
Okay.
we run a gaming convention called Conclave in Thomond Park, and it's a large enough event. We run 3 events there actually throughout the year, and it can be from about 150 to up to 300 people we've had at times. And these participants, they're unaware of my impairment, but I'm often wearing sunglasses when they're, coming in to register, because it's a very bright room. There's white floors and white walls, and
Right.
there can be a lot of glare.
Yes, yes, yes.
And one of the stories I mentioned was that a few years back, I was asked by the staff at Thomond Park and the participants at the event, if there was ever a year I didn't go out drinking the night before. And because they thought that's why I was wearing the sunglasses all the time. So they got a good laugh out of it when I explained that it was in fact actually because I couldn't see at all in there. The snow blindness kind of effect that the white
Yes.
walls and things have, that glare is just, it's absolutely killer.
Well,
So yeah, that definitely I think helped to kind of dispel a one-dimensional view, because when people hear about a disability or an impairment of any description, they don't ever, kind of presume, I suppose, a night out on the town is the last thing they think you're up to.
yes, exactly, exactly. But as you rightly say, it's dispelling those myths, but in um, a and essentially an awareness raising exercise through the fact that you're able to do absolutely everything that anybody else can do. And it's dispelling that preconceptions that people can have.
Yeah, and it's just basically that as you say there, that you can do anything that anybody else can do, and that is an important message. But it's also important to say that, like, you most likely won't be able to do it the same way. You
Correct.
can achieve the same result, but given, you have to take into account what level of sight you have or ability you have, and
Yes.
just to come at it from a different approach. And it's really about adaptation there. It can take more time, but it is all possible, of course.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Um, and you mentioned also there earlier on about perceptions in the media, and how at times, I suppose, as you said in your speech there, the desire not to offend can be quite isolating.
Yes, that it can, because when people are afraid to say something to you, to make a joke in front of you, or even to offer you help at times, because they're overly worried about offending, or
Yeah.
causing offense, or being politically incorrect. And that does it causes this barrier where people, they're nervous to talk to you, so they avoid the risk of causing offense, at all costs. And that then can make you feel, well, it has made me feel at times very kind of separate and different, or
And how did,
you have to try and bridge the gap for them. It becomes, I found in my experience that it's become my responsibility to make them feel comfortable,
okay, okay.
and it's I'm sure it's something that, like, I know it's something that I've heard echoed from others, that it can be a hard line to walk there, and not just for people who have an impairment, but also for those anyone interacting with you, because it's so hyper focused on, as you were saying, people are conscious of it, and it's all with very good intention, but it can be a really big isolating factor for people.
And how would you suggest is the best way to break down those barriers?
Make the joke, make the darkest, dirtiest joke that you can think of, in my case anyway. Now, I do understand that not everybody shares that kind of dark sense of humor, but just chance it. Make whatever joke is come to mind, or just just speak your mind as you would with anybody else, basically. You don't even have to be making a joke. It's it's to just try and think of, treat people as people first and not anything else. I know that might sound cheesy and cliched, but
But it's the
it,
truth.
it is the simplest solution, just
Yeah.
to be yourself. And I
To
mean,
know,
if you wouldn't be worried about offending anyone else, why would you be worried about offending somebody with a disability?
fair point. Yeah, I suppose it's just a question of normalizing things as much as possible.
Yeah, yeah, it really is.
And in terms of kind of the um media, do you feel that at times they can be too in favor of political correctness, that they're not adequately reflective of people with disabilities?
I think they do the very best that they can. And it is important that they are politically correct, because obviously there are words and topics that are very sensitive for people. And when you're broadcasting to the general public, you have to be mindful of that. And I appreciate that, and so I can understand why it's focused on,
Yes.
and and as well, when you're broadcasting something, it has to be something interesting, and usually we find things that are different interesting. So therefore they really have to. Sorry, I'm struggling for words here, June.
No, you're fine. I mean, essentially, what you were conveying really was around the fact that often the the media kind of put spotlight on stories where people have kind of achieved against all odds type thing. Um,
Yes, yes,
and
yes, exactly, and that is great. But
and I suppose due recognition is needed of that, but it's also a question, to your point earlier, of just making sure that um, everybody is
I think I know where I was going with that there now. There is due recognition needed of all these, exceptional stories, and it's great to hear. And because it's the differences that, are focused on. I mean, that is the role of the media, to present these unusual topics to us. I mean, it it would be a very boring radio show if everybody called in and said that they had a cup of tea this morning, and and they got dressed. That they're the media is there to cover these exciting events in some way,
yeah,
so it's not really the forum to do that. And that's why in my talk I was talking about broadening the focus, not just in the media but in our own lives, because it's those little misunderstandings, like with the staff at Thomond Park and the participants. They just presume that every year I was hungover, and it's those little misunderstandings that I think they kind of silently can help break those stereotypes. And I
yeah,
feel like that that kind of spreading through word of mouth of did you not know she's blind, or
Yeah.
I would have never guessed, kind of thing. Like, I think that stays with people more. It gives them a real life experience of something that they already believe to be true, that disabled people are, just as competent and add value like everyone else.
Correct, exactly. And I suppose have you found that in a workplace setting as well, that you have literally helped debunk some myths people might have had, or help quash some of the stereotypes?
I suppose I have, to a degree. Now, I've really only recently gained kind of like employment as such. I've worked as a bartender in the past a good number of years ago. I suppose what I'll say is I was out of the workforce for a while, and
Yeah.
I have recently returned, and I'm working as a switchboard operator in the local Limerick Intrio office, which would be the social welfare office in Limerick.
Yes.
So I wouldn't be so bold as to say that I have actually broken these stereotypes, but my colleagues at work had, a number of them were quite surprised when they did learn that my vision was limited. And I have to say, if I made, they have been absolutely wonderful, because as I said, I'd been out of the workplace for a while, and the Limerick Inter office has just been incredibly accommodating and understanding, and they've helped me develop a whole range of skills that I never thought I would have. So I'm grateful for them and that very positive work experience I've had there.
Yeah, which is fabulous for you. And as I said, maybe unbeknownst to you, you have challenged their own previous perceptions of people, which is, going back to your earlier point, probably one of the benefits of a hidden disability, because you've already demonstrated that you're fully competent, and that only then disclosed the situation to the point of that they're surprised.
Yeah. Yeah, and at the canteen, or in the yard before work, people have it has come up, and they have been taken aback by it, and again, the response was always very positive, and it was just kind of one of shock of, I really didn't expect that. Now, I didn't think that you
Yeah,
would have a sight loss issue.
yeah, exactly. Um, well, Maeve, in terms of if other people are listening, who are either having concerns about disclosing their sight loss, or um, feeling exactly as you felt, that there's kind of benefits to a hidden disability, would you recommend that they get involved in kind of the NCBI advocacy work?
I would. I suppose personally, I have found it very helpful, but it's down to each individual how they deal with everything. Um, but I would definitely say try it. If it works for you, then that's brilliant. Um, but just keep trying everything. My motto in life is very much to just try everything once, figure out if I can do it or not.
It's a good motto.
And if so. But I suppose I was quite disengaged from the NCBI services for a number of years, and when I did re-engage with the service, that's how I gained my employment. And then I put in the submission for the National Sharing Day, and I guess it kind of opened a few doors. And that was probably because I was disengaged, because I was kind of dealing with my own things and
Yeah.
trying to work through things. But I would say it's difficult, but to just re-engage with the service, and tell them what you want. Tell them what it is that you're looking for, what you're struggling with, and that's really what the advocacy is. It's trying to listen to people's concerns, and understand exactly what they are, and then work with them to build a response. Well, at least, in my opinion, that's been my experience of it. So I would definitely encourage anybody to, who is maybe kind of disillusioned at the moment, to just get back in touch, and see if you can gain something from it, because I know I have, and thank
Well,
you
as
for
you
that.
rightly say, unless they try it, they won't know. So it's a question of taking the bull by the horns and just giving it a go. Any listeners do want to get involved with either NCBI services or the work of the advocacy team and get connected with other people with sight loss who are advocates with us, the number is 1850 33 43 53. And there are advocacy groups scattered right across the country.
There is, and actually just on that, June, I know that some of the other local advocacy networks, they've been running an online I think it's like click and chat, and it's just like a drop-in like chat service as well, where it's not necessarily about what you want from the service or anything. It's just about, you know, trying to stay sane during COVID. And I think it's Darren and Jackie. I'm not sure. I haven't had the time to engage with it myself yet, but I feel like that would be something that's important too. It's available as well.
That's true. Yes, you're dead right. A lot of the groups that were meeting face to face have obviously had to switch to an online presence at the minute. But the value of that is also that we can extend the invitation further, so that people aren't restricted by geographic boundaries. And it also means that people can access it from the comfort of their own home, which is proving very beneficial to many people that are using our services. So listen, Maedhbh, I'll let you go and just say thanks very much for having a chat with us today, and best of luck with everything that you do. And thanks again for participating in the National Sharing Day.
Yeah, no, thanks a million. And it was good to chat to you.
Thank you.